Hello again, this is Chelsea Young. So today we are going to be going over evaluating and examining peer-reviewed sources. So what I'm wanting us to get out of today is just learning how to examine the various ways peer-reviewed articles can be identified, both in databases and online. And then we will have you verify if an article is truly from a peer-reviewed journal or not. So the plan for today is talking about specific databases, reviewing categories of information, and the peer review process. And then I will kind of show you what that looks like from a database and then online. Then there's going to be an activity that I would like for you to do, and then discussion questions. So to make sure we're all on the same page, again, whenever I use these specific terms, these are the definitions that I'm referring to. Looking for, or for research, it's looking for information on a topic that will help you prove a claim. Peer review is a pre-publication process in which scholars, usually anonymously, review each other's work to improve its quality. A scholarly journal is a periodical containing articles written by and for scholars. These are almost always peer-reviewed. Periodicals are publications that come out on a regular schedule, like journals, magazines, newspapers. And then authoritative. It's a way of describing sources whose accuracy can be trusted. Scholarly journal articles and books are highly authoritative. So, kind of like we discussed in the last video, why do we use specific journal or specific databases? You know, the same thing. Why do we go to specific stores? It's because they have what we want. Databases are very like stores. There's certain clothing stores you like. There's going to be certain databases that you like. Certain ones are helpful. Certain ones are not. You know, there's lots of different places to shop. There's a lot of different databases to choose from. And the databases, just like stores, will cater to specific goals and needs. There's always something out there that will be helpful to you, so you can find the best options for you. So there are three categories of information resources. There's newspapers and magazines, journals, and then peer-reviewed or scholarly journals. So to start off with, I'm going to discuss newspapers and magazines. These are written by reporters who may or may not be experts on the subject that they're writing about. A lot of the time, these reporters can be assigned beats, and the longer they've been on a beat, the more trustworthy their reports can be, because they're more familiar with the type of information that they are providing in their pieces. They have a better idea how credible the information is that they're getting from their sources as well. And so you have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, because especially newspapers and news sources, because nowadays we want instantaneous updates. As soon as something happens, we want to know about it, and we want all of the facts and all of the information. Not all of that happens instantaneously, and as quickly as reporters go out and they get the information, something could change. There's an update. There was a car crash. Could be a couple hours later they find out there was another person involved, or there was something else involved that caused the accident. So going back and finding alternative sources to this event, or to things that you read about, is always good. And then also going back and just checking to see what type of updates there have been at that particular news source by that particular author can also help give you more credible information as you're going forward. And just because it's not coming from a library's database doesn't mean that it's not going to be good for your paper. It just all depends on what you are doing for your paper or for your project. So now we kind of move on to journals. And just because it's a journal doesn't necessarily mean it's written by experts in the field. Now, experts can publish in journals, but it's not a requirement. And these journals don't always go through a peer review process. It doesn't always go through an extensive type of review before things get published. So some of the things that can get published can be rather off the wall. Things aren't always fact-checked in these. So while the process to get the information printed can take a little bit longer and could be a little bit more factually accurate, does not guarantee that that will be so. I would always just do a little bit of digging for information that I've seen in journals. And last, we have the peer-reviewed or the scholarly journals. These are written by experts, and they are the articles that are published have been reviewed by other experts within that field to verify that the information is accurate and that it's reliable. You know, the methodology of the study that was used is sound. The conclusions they came to are accurate and verifiable. So these types are they're more reliable sources of information because everything has been checked and double checked and possibly even triple checked. So these are always really good information resources to use. Next, we have the different types of peer review. Not every publication uses a single review process. There's a lot of different processes that are available out there, and so they use different ones depending on what they want to do, what seems to work best for them, and other factors. So I'm going to just describe some of them. The first one is single anonymous. And this one is where the reviewer knows who the author is, but the reviewer's identity remains unknown. This is more common in science and medicine journals. A pro for this is that because the reviewers are anonymous, it allows them the freedom to give honest feedback. It could be because, again, they know the author. Maybe they didn't feel comfortable saying something in person, but they can write a review and it be more critical or a little bit more honest. But because they do know who the author is, the con of this is that, again, they know who the author is, and that can influence their decision regarding continuing or not continuing that article in the publication process. Next comes the double anonymous. This is where both the reviewer and the author do not know who the other one is. This one is more common in the humanities and the social sciences. The same pro for this one, it gives the reviewer more chance to be fair and to be honest because they don't know who the author is. A con, though, especially if the reviewer is very familiar with all of the research that is out there, or at least a nice chunk of it, sometimes the reviewer can figure out who the author is, and then it leads back into that single anonymous. It can influence their decision on the publication process of that article. Then we have the open peer review process. This is where the reviewers know who the author is, and at some point the author will learn the identity of the reviewer. And for this, sometimes it means that the reviewer's name can be published alongside the author's, and this is because the reviewer and the author learn who each other is, there can be discussion over the content of the article. New thought process and discoveries can happen due to this conversation, and because of that, sometimes the author will include the reviewer as part of that because of the contribution that was made. And sometimes what happens with this, there's an early version of the article that is published, and then once it's been reviewed and once there's been changes, the article can be published again, and you can see how that article has changed and taken shape as you go forward. Then we have the post-publication review, and this is where it's put under peer review before publication, but it could also be published without a peer review, and it can request viewers to review, or it can request people reading this journal to review that particular article, and the author can then change things. This one, for me, is more hit or miss, because once it's published, it does not guarantee that you will get a review. It just opens the possibility to multiple reviews, but it does not guarantee that somebody will actually review your article. So that's kind of the pro and con. You could get a lot of different reviews, or you could get none. And those are not always moderated. So like I said, it's a hit or miss sometimes. Last is registered reports, and this is the peer review process is split into two parts. The first part takes place after a study has been designed before any real research or writing has been done. So kind of like an outline of what is going to happen is submitted, and that publication accepts that outline and promises to publish the article once a successful study has been done and completed and written up. And so it's kind of given an in-principle acceptance in IPA. So once the study has been completed, the article is written and it's successful, that article will be published. And it goes through the same type of post-publication process. It's printed, there's no review process beforehand. You bank on getting reviews once it's been published. And that, again, you could get lots of reviews, you could get no reviews. So next is a video. Let me show you what that is. There's my kids. And I'm sorry for any echo that you hear.
Scholarly articles, academic articles, peer-reviewed articles. You may have heard these terms used by your professor, but what do they mean? Essentially, these are all different ways of describing the same thing, research articles that have been published in scholarly journals. But what is a research article, and how does it get published in a scholarly journal? First of all, the article reports a scholar's research practice and findings, and it's written with an audience of other researchers in mind. Finally, in order to be published and accepted by the scholarly community, the article must pass several quality tests. The most important of these tests is called peer review. We can get a better understanding of the role of peer review if we look at the academic publishing process as a whole. Let's imagine a researcher who wants to share a discovery with the academic community. To do this, he writes a draft article describing his research and findings and submits it for publication in a scholarly journal. Here's where the article has to pass its first test. The journal's editor reads over the article to decide whether it's a good fit for her journal. If it is, she sends copies of the article to a group of experts to evaluate the article's quality in a process called peer review. This is the article's second and most important test. These experts are the author's peers, since they're working in the same research area. And since they're making a judgment about the article, they're sometimes called referees. So peer-reviewed articles are sometimes called refereed articles. Each reviewer evaluates the article by asking questions to judge the quality and significance of the research. Questions like, what is this research about? Is it interesting? Is it important? Is the methodology sound? Are the conclusions logical? And are the findings original? Based on the answers to these questions, the reviewers decide whether the article is worthy of publication in the journal. They then make a recommendation to the editor, either approve the article for publication or reject it. Even if they recommend publishing the article, they usually expect the author to make revisions. The editor, however, makes the final determination whether the article should be approved, rejected, or revised. Rejection is common, though. The most prestigious journals are very selective about the articles they publish, so they tend to have high rejection rates. Some journals reject more than 90% of the submissions they receive. From the time the researcher first submits his draft article to the time it is finally published, several months or years may have elapsed. Once the journal is published, it is made available to subscribers, which are usually university libraries, because individual subscriptions are very expensive, often hundreds or thousands of dollars a year. By the way, like all established systems, the peer review system has its critics, and scholars continue to think about how the peer review process might be improved. The library has tools to help you find peer-reviewed research. If you want to know more about the peer review process or need help finding peer-reviewed articles, ask a librarian for help.
So I hope that was really helpful. So what we're going to do before we get started on the activity, I want to kind of just show you what this would look like. So whenever you're here, and whenever you go through the activity, I want you to kind of use the ones that we've gone through, like in the previous video. So we can do like criminal justice. I'll do criminal justice abstracts. I'll do the same search that I did last time, just to kind of make it a little bit easier. From here, you can go through and go ahead and select your scholarly or peer-reviewed journals. Also gonna make sure that it's in English. So once you get your results and you go through, this is what is called that metadata. This is where we can go through, and you see this one doesn't show that it includes peer-reviewed. But whenever you click on it and you look, it says that yes, it is. So this one is Texas Review of Law and Politics. I'm going to find something a little bit different, so it's a little bit easier for us to find something. Or so I can show you how to check and make sure that that is something that is peer-reviewed, and it's not just something that our database says is peer-reviewed, because as you can see from here, this isn't showing it necessarily. Once you click on that source, that publication, again, this shows that yes, it is peer-reviewed. A good way to double check and make sure that it is, or if you think something might be but our database is not showing it, Google it. Just see what comes up. So it should be this first one. So one of the first things that I see whenever I come here and I scroll along the top is this has a spot specifically for those who are reviewing articles, for those who are reviewing things that are going to be published in this particular publication. You see reviewer guidelines and best practices. You see how to conduct a review, quick guide to writing a solid peer review. So this is a great place, just really easy. It shows you that this does include a type of peer review because it shows you that. One of the things I like to do, I like to go to the author's page, pretend I'm an author going to submit something, and most of the time they tend to show me what type of peer review this is. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, sometimes it's just strictly saying that it's a peer-reviewed journal. So like you see here in this editorial policy, tells you straight off, it's a peer-reviewed journal. And sometimes it says, what type of peer review they do, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know that I'm seeing that it's including like what type of peer review that it is. Sometimes they include it, sometimes they don't. But that is one great way to be able to go through and check. Of course, you can always go to their About page, and sometimes that will tell you what type of peer review process that it goes through. It looks like this is just saying that it is a peer-reviewed journal. Just different ways to go through and find out about that. So next is going to be that activity. And so the activity is you're going to get a worksheet. I just want you to make a copy of it. I'm not assigning you any of these databases, but I would like you to choose one of the databases that we've covered. Identify the peer review limiter, all that fun stuff. Go through, do the search that you're using for your topic, and check to see whether it's peer reviewed in our database. And then also search for your journal online, find the website, and identify if it's peer reviewed and what type of process it goes through if it tells you that. So just to kind of show you what that would look like, this is the activity. You can just go through, answer these questions. To make a copy, you just go to File, Make a Copy, and all that fun stuff. You'll submit that. And so last, we have, of course, our discussion. Go through, look at some of these questions, and think about them. Do you think you learned anything new today? Do you think that this has better helped you understand the peer review process or how to evaluate something Do you think that this is going to help you in your other classes? Just some thoughts and ideas. And of course, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. Here's my email and my office number, and you can always stop by the 3rd floor and see me in office 312. Bye!